You're listening to Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson Karbley. We're just two fans sharing our love for the game in Carolina Panthers football. So join us, crack open a cold one, some bubbly, a little wine, some scotch. We don't care, whatever makes you sleep better at night. Before we dive into the episode, a little self-promotion. Stop what you're doing. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap. Join the discussion on our Facebook group. We have over 2,500 members. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Panthers on Tap. Panthers head into the bye week 0-6. Bryson, I think it's safe to say this week is the only week we don't have to worry about a Panthers loss.
That's very safe to say. Hopefully they don't find a way to mess around and lose the bye week. But yeah, when you say the Panthers are 0-6 going into the bye week, it makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. I can't lie. Very, very, very depressing times in Carolina.
Yeah, it's been brutal. I don't think anyone has really would have predicted this start. It's disappointing and kind of depressing and bag on your head type shit at this point. But let's talk about the game because we got to break it down a little bit here. Let's start with the offense like we typically do. What did you think of Bryce? It looked like he was going to be rolling in that first quarter. I mean, I was on my high horse there for a little while, and then obviously things tapered off. But to come out swinging against a really good team, I was excited for a good quarter, and that was about it.
Yeah, hang the banner. All right, Carolina was up 14-0 in the first quarter at the end of the first versus the Miami Dolphins. That's the high point of the season so far, probably. So, I mean, hey, that's progress, right? I think Bryce did, all jokes aside, Bryce did improve again another week into the season, showed improvement. Of course, no interceptions. And then he did throw that really nice touchdown to Adam Thielen. That was just, I mean, when he threw it, I got chills how good it was over the two defenders in the end zone to Adam Thielen. It just really makes me wonder. I think it was Josh Norris on Twitter. It was like, man, what if Carolina had three receivers that had the talent of Adam Thielen, 33-year-old Adam Thielen? This team would be probably have a couple wins right now if they had three Adam Thielen. So shout out to him. I mean, he's really playing above and beyond what this team expected. Bringing him in, I think, maybe not Frank Reich, but who's a huge fan of Adam Thielen, but I think overall in the fan base, we didn't really expect for him to come in and be the number one slot receiver in the NFL, stats-wise. And I think he's like fifth in the league in receiving yards. So, I mean, he's balling. He's getting the job done, and he doesn't have a whole lot of help in that receiving room or tight end room. But shout out to him. And then our guy Chuba, he got the start, got the nod, 19 carries, 88 yards. Almost 5 yards a carry, and then got a touchdown. I thought he looked more explosive than Miles Sanders has at all this season. He looked like he was, getting yards after contact. Looked like he did all right and picking up the blitzes in the backfield when he was in pass protection. I was impressed with Chuba, and I don't think Miles Sanders needs
The man who hated Chuba Hubbard is impressed with Chuba Hubbard. I love it.
Yeah. Hey, I've admitted I was wrong. I was wrong about Chuba. When you watch a running back like Miles Sanders play for 5 weeks and you get that performance from him week in and week out, and then you watch Chuba who comes in, who doesn't fumble one, who averages almost 5 yards a carry and scores a touchdown and has looked more explosive than Miles Sanders has at any point during the season. I mean, it's hard not to argue that Chuba's the best running back on this team right now. So shout out to him. I mean, I really don't.
Yeah, it was good to see Blackshear too, man. I was excited about that. He got I mean, not too many carries, but it was good to see him get into the mix and into the fold. And I think with Sanders out, that'll help too, because we both have been big fans of him really since last year. And he just hasn't gotten the opportunity yet. Healthy scratch almost every week. So.
Yeah, we did lose a valuable part to this offense, which really sucks, which we'll get into later with the new offensive play caller. But Chenault injured, and it seems like it's might be significant. I haven't seen very many updates. I don't know if you have, Curtis, but it seems like it might be
on significant, but
long term. I mean, this team just can't catch a break for injuries. I mean, this is the worst season I can ever remember for the Carolina Panthers injury-wise to legitimate starters on a team, besides the years Cam was injured. But numbers-wise, losing the total amount of starters that they have, I can't remember a season that was this bad.
It's been brutal. I mean, there's a couple guys, hopefully they're going to get back here after the bye, but even then, it's just hit after hit after hit. And for a young team you kind of need everything going on all cylinders. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it ain't no excuse. You gotta be able to play with the players you got and scheme for them too. But yeah, the Shenault injury sucked because I thought that was a really good mix and was creating some opportunities for other people and opening up things. So that was going to hurt a little bit, but I think Blackshear and Hubbard, that's a two good tandem right now. We'll see where Sanders is at, but I don't think you're going to want to mix that up really right now because Hubbard is playing pretty damn well, in the run game, blocking, coming out of the backfield. So
even catching, he's been doing all right.
Yeah, which has been surprising, and he's making guys miss. You always, remember Chuba getting always taken out by the turf monster, but he is just pounding the rock right now, and that's good to see because once you saw the run game get going, you saw the offense start to pick up, and we saw the 14 points that first quarter that we all want to put our hat on. And I thought Bryce overall played well. Obviously, his first free no turnover game this year, no fumbles, no interceptions. He didn't have a ton of yards, although a little over 200, but for the most part, Bryce looked really good. And again, he had, those 3-4 plays. You mentioned Adam Thielen one. That one in the back of the end zone was damn good over I think it was the safety on that play. But he had his accuracy just pinpoint. I mean, there was a couple of them over the middle, and the big harp on him is, he's small, he can't throw over the middle. There was a couple where he stayed in and got rocked. I mean, just got nailed, stuck in the pocket. There was a guy coming in low, and he still stepped in and took the shot and threw it. And for all the gripe he's gotten in this offseason about him being small and taking hits and all that, I mean, he took some big hits on Sunday, popped right back up and kept going. So I think it's slowly coming together. It's taken way longer than we'd hoped, but I think slowly here you're going to start to see things turn around and them start winning games here. And what's nice now is they've kind of gotten over the tougher part of the schedule. There's some easy games to stack together here coming up. So, or not easy games, just a lesser opponent, I should say.
Yeah, nothing's easy for Carolina.
As far as it goes with, the Bears at 1-4 and the Colts, Anthony Richardson out for this season more than likely. And obviously the Texans are hot right now, 3-3, but I think a lot of those teams are young and still trying to figure things out. So I think that's going to play into Carolina's favor here coming out of the bye, which is good. Offensive line, let's talk about them because
one other thing I wanted to add about Bryce is while I do think he made progress, and I do think he had one of his best games of the year, he is continuing to struggle in the deep ball. He missed Hurst that could have been a touchdown on that fourth down play, missed him high by a couple yards, and then there was another deep ball, I believe it was to Shark that he missed.
Shark, yep.
So Bryce Young is improving on a lot of things. And there's still growth to be made in a lot of areas, but the deep ball is probably where he needs the most work right now. Just being honest, I still think that he's the right choice. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't, but just to be completely fair and transparent, while he has made progress on the short and intermediate throws, the deep ball is struggling still. And
I think that will come in with time too. And I agree with you. There was those two plays. I'm just sitting there like, damn it. Like you connect on that changes things. So I don't think there's been there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for him to throw them. So I think that'll come with time. And I think we'll talk about it later, but I think with this new offensive coordinator calling plays, I think that's going to change things a little bit too. And you might see a little bit more deep shots, but you'd like to see him connect. And he obviously he's done it he did it in training camp a lot with Chark, and hopefully I think that will pick up here as we move forward. But I agree with you. I think that's probably his biggest downfall this so far is the deep shots, even taking them to this point. So, but I think there's a lot at play, whether it's the opportunities to take them in the game, whether that's the coaches with the play calling. And I think also it's coupled with the offensive line. The offensive line is not good.
Mm-hmm.
I know last week they looked fairly well in this game. If you look at PFF or what you want to take, you got to take them with a grain of salt. But they struggled this week. They gave up 3 sacks. I'm pulling it up here as I'm talking, but I know Josh Norris had put out a tweet and is like, these guards they're not even serviceable. Just like guys coming in just red hot, right in Bryce Young's face. And so that's been obviously the struggle all season with this O-line. And it showed up on this past Sunday against a really good team. But yeah, here's the grades. I'll get rid of this here so you could see them all. Cade Mays obviously stepped in for the injured Zavala. Throckmorton didn't. I thought he struggled a lot in this game. He had a good couple run block plays that opened things up, and some double teams with Taylor Moton in the run game that I thought he did well with. But across the board, Bradley Bozeman, Moton, probably one of his bad games of the year, and then obviously Icky gave up the sack too. So I think Icky's, if I remember right, when we were watching the game, I was like, the guy didn't even get in the guy's way. And the guy just came free. I don't know what he was doing on. I'm like, what is going on here? So
Icky's was like one of the second play of the game. Bradley Chubb sacked Bryce Young, right? I think that was.
I don't remember when it was, but I know there was a play where, and maybe it was Moton that gave it up, and I can't remember. It was one of the. It was either Icky or Moton, where the guy literally just came free. I mean, just totally missed him, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, you're gonna get Bryce killed out here. So I feel like there's been way too many moments like that this season across the board, just offensive struggles. And I think Corbett is going to be a big help in that when he comes back, but there's still, like, even with Zavala back, Zavala still struggles. So, like, that's something they're going to have to look at this offseason to bolster. And I know every year they did it this year. They drafted Zavala in the 4th, but you keep stacking that O-line because they're going to need it. They really are.
Yeah, but like you said, with Corbett coming back, hopefully that does improve things a little bit. This was definitely Throckmorton's, worst game as a Panther up to this point. I've been praising him for coming in and playing as well as he has, but this game was definitely his worst. And then Bozeman has continued to struggle in pass blocking every week. It's like an ongoing issue. He's a good run blocker, but pass blocking is. He's faulting in it, and it's not been good enough. It really hasn't been, especially for somebody that was a priority this offseason. So hopefully with Corbett coming back, he helps Bozeman in that area. But I imagine that they're going to bring Corbett back in at right guard and then keep Cade Mays at left maybe, because Cade Mays he's been okay. He gave up 5 hurries, but this is one of his better games, unfortunately, as a starting guard for the Panthers. So maybe they keep him there and they bench Throckmorton. I don't know what they're going to do, but they really miss Christensen, man. I think we really took for granted what Brady Christensen meant to this team, and they miss him a lot, and they've missed Corbett a lot too. So getting him back is going to be huge, and we'll see where that takes the offensive line.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there with Christensen. I think way too many people took advantage of what he was for this O-line. And I can only imagine what this team would be right now with him in there opposite one of these other guys. It sucks. It really does suck that he's out for the year, because I think this O-line, and then you would have had Corbett coming back probably week 7. And we could have had a couple wins maybe in here, but it's the way the things shake out sometimes. I think Zavala probably I would think be at left guard whenever he comes back. It sounds like, I mean, he was at that Halloween thing yesterday and walking around and stuff. So it looks like, he might be back by week 7. So maybe he slides in there, and then I'm really hoping Corbett is back by this week 7, because then you kind of get everything coming together at the right time of when they need it. So just something to monitor. But O-line definitely not helping Bryce Young out at all. I think I saw a stat, I can't remember, with CJ Stroud, because these guys are going to be compared for the next decade or so, and he wasn't even hit until like 100 and some snaps or something like that. It was ridiculous what the statistic was on that. So that's just, I mean, I could only wish that. Going back to Bryce though a little bit, and it's hard to see in game when you're not looking at like an all 22 of what's going on in there. But I thought at points he held on to the ball a little too long. Again, I don't know if wide receivers aren't getting open, because I know that could be the case as well, because we've seen that earlier in the year. But sometimes it's so hard to see when just the camera angles we get to see on game day. So something to monitor going forward. Just he needs to be able to get that ball out quick, and that's what he's.
And at some point, he's going to have to trust his receivers a little more and throw some 50-50 balls. He doesn't really, throw any of those jump balls to a single coverage one-on-one wide receiver and give him a chance. So at some point, he's going to have to trust his guys and start doing that more, because, you're not always going to have somebody open in the NFL. So sometimes single coverage one-on-one is considered open in this league, and especially with you got a guy like Chark or Thielen or even Mingo, you got to throw some of those up and hope that your guy wins. I mean, that happens a lot in this league. That's with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and I mean these guys are of course much higher level talent than what we have, but I mean they got there because of the situation that their quarterbacks put them in continuously and allowed them to grow. So I do think that Bryce is going to get to that point, but I mean, like we've mentioned, he's not really had a whole lot of opportunity to do that, just because the offensive line hasn't afforded him that time to even allow his receivers to get deep enough to even be single coverage deep down the field. So maybe that's something that we see more of under the new offensive coordinator, but that's something Bryce is going to have to get more comfortable with as we go forward.
What are your thoughts on the other 3 receivers besides Thielen? Because this is like a checkpoint for us of how these guys are doing since we are at the bye. Chark and Mingo and TMJ. It's hard to judge, it's a smaller sample size, but kind of disappointed in Chark. I thought he'd have a bigger impact on this team earlier on, just what we've seen in training camp. I mean, he was always popping something off deep. And I think there's a lot of things that play into that, but I just feel like he would have had a bigger role on this team this far into the season. I thought Mingo would have had a more type of Tank Dell impact so far. Tank Dell obviously he's been injured recently, but he's had a couple big plays early on with Stroud, and then TMJ he's been a disappointment up to this point, or I don't know if the staff just doesn't believe in him or what, but I mean that he had a drop on a 4th down this last week that, I mean, he doesn't get a lot of opportunities, and when you're in there, you got to make the most of them, and I feel like he hasn't shown up and has kind of been a disappointment too.
Yeah, he hit him right in the chest, and he bounced out and he dropped it. That was so disappointing. And then Mingo had a big drop as well in this Dolphins game where Bryce hit him across the middle and hit him in the chest, and it bounced up in the air, and lucky it wasn't intercepted. But yeah, I mean, to say that we're not disappointed, I think would be an understatement. When you look at the numbers every game, these wide receivers just consistently aren't getting separation. And, Bryce is a rookie quarterback. He's going to need to see open windows. He's not, he does have elite anticipation, but what is there to anticipate if your receivers aren't ever getting open? There's nothing to anticipate. So I think that, yeah, I'm disappointed in Chark. I'm disappointed in Mingo, and I'm very disappointed the most in Terrace Marshall Jr. because I've really, really believed in him. And I really thought this was going to be his year. I thought he had a chance to be the best receiver on this team coming into the season. I think I even said that, but he's not, and he's just not good at anything right now. I mean, he's not getting a whole lot of jump ball opportunities, which is what he's best at, but he's not creating separation. He's not getting open on routes, and then when he does, he drops the ball, and it's just a complete disappointment. So Adam Thielen, complete opposite, like we talked about earlier, going above and beyond what we expected. I do think Mingo has made some progress.
I agree.
As the weeks have come along, and I am kind of hopeful that he will continue to do that and grow. I like what I've seen from him in the last couple of weeks, besides that drop versus the Dolphins. But I think for the most part, he's kind of settling in. But hopefully, maybe it was the scheme. Maybe it was, I don't know, that these receivers were struggling, and maybe under the new offense, which it isn't going to be a completely new system or anything, but it is a different style. It is a different, I think the way they put it was a different, like personality is how they said it. There's personality in play calling, and it's a different personality for Thomas Brown to be calling plays. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I think for TMJ, a lot of us expected, and I'm just trying to pull up his stats here quickly from last year, game by game, but I feel like he had a pretty strong showing towards the end of the season last year and kind of started to come on a lot more towards the end of the year. Just pulling up his stats here. And I think a lot of us felt like that was just going to take off going into this year. And then he obviously dealt with some injuries in training camp. But I just don't know if this staff valued him as much, because even, from the jump, whether you were watching in training camp or preseason and the practices, it was always Thielen, Chark, Mingo a lot of the time in that rotation as 1, 2, and 3. So,
yeah,
he just, I don't know if they just don't see the value there. And obviously when he comes into games, he's, he has a drop here or there, but I feel like with him, he needs a lot of repetition and just getting reps in there to kind of see, the fruits of his labor come out. But I don't know. I just, that's a guy I just don't think is going to flourish in this offense, or they just don't have faith in him. That's just kind of what I get out of it. And he kind of reminds me of what they see in Jeremy Chinham. We'll talk about the defense here shortly, of just, he's not getting a lot of opportunity. Could see him getting traded type thing. I don't know what his value is out there. I don't think it's much, but that's just someone he hasn't really gotten anything. But you never know. Look at Blackshear. He wasn't getting anything. All of a sudden Sanders goes down and he's playing in games and returning, kicks and stuff like that too. But let's talk about the defense up to this point. This number is ridiculous. 84 points in 2 games. I know a couple weeks ago I was like, yeah, the defense just keep doing what you're doing. I think that was before the Lions game, and then they just got eaten up, and I was getting shit online for it, of course. But I felt like early in the year they were playing all right, and they've been really bad. Obviously, injuries have played a role in that, but even without that, it's hard to base off the Dolphins because they're such a high-powered team, but I think we've had a lot of high expectations for what Evero was going to bring to this defense. And, some of the players they have, obviously there's a lot of guys injured, but yeah, they have been disappointing, just to say the least.
Yeah, of course there has been injuries to the linebacking room, to the corner room, to the safety room. Not a whole lot of injuries on the defensive line, and this is a defense that ranks almost dead last in rush defense. Just gave up 115 yards to Raheem Mostert, and then, game versus the Lions gave up significant yardage to David Montgomery. So this is a run defense that, for the most part, is complete on the defensive line. I know you're missing your run-stopping linebackers, but the defensive line's been terrible for stopping the run, and that was their Achilles heel, really, versus the Dolphins. Of course, Tyreek Hill had 163 yards receiving, but you kind of expect that when you're playing against the fastest player in the NFL, and you're not giving any safety help to Dante Jackson, who's got him one-on-one that gets burnt. That Mateus, whatever his name. I don't even know the guy's name that was playing safety.
Farley.
Yeah, Farley. I mean, it's crazy. Again, I don't want to put an extreme. I'm not calling for Evero's job just because of all the injuries that Carolina has suffered on the defensive side of the ball, but I did expect the run defense to be better than what it has been. And maybe they're missing Shaq Thompson a significant amount in the run game. I didn't think he was that big of a force in the run game there it would have a significant drop-off like it has with his absence, but maybe he is, and they're missing him. But, yeah, the best run defender on the defensive lines is Derek Brown, obviously, and then YGM. YGM's been the best at setting the edge and defending the run. So, disappointing with the defense, of course. This is the number one offense in the league, rushing and passing. So really expected them to give up 40 or so points. I think we both had them in that range when we
30s or something like that. Yeah.
I think the defense gave up touchdowns on 5 out of 6 drives after the Panthers went up 14-0. So not great. You'd like to get a stop every now and then in between, but didn't do that. And I have to do it. Another game where Brian Burns went up against a backup left tackle.
I knew it was coming.
A backup left tackle, Teron Armstead's backup, and Brian Burns came away with 0 sacks. I don't know how many pressures he came away with. I haven't looked at those numbers, but he did have a couple of pressures throughout the game, and I think he had a tackle for a loss, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a game where you really need Brian Burns to come away with a couple sacks. He had 1 tackle for loss and 1 quarterback hit. This is the number I got. This is a game where you hope that your guy who wants between $28 and $30 million, what's being reported a year, to come away with a sack against a backup left tackle. Unfortunately, he didn't. Was really a non-factor for most of the game. I do understand he's getting double teamed. Max Crosby gets double teamed. These other guys.
One of the highest double team rates in the league is Brian Burns.
Yeah, he's like 13th or 14th, right?
No, for double team rates?
Yeah.
No, he's like 7th.
Okay. Well,
it's high.
Okay, the chart I was looking at was the double team rate charting versus the amount of times he wins, and he's like 13th or 14th in the league. But I mean, I expected a sack. I don't know if you're not, or if you're okay with coming out of this game with Brian Burns not having a sack or 2 or making a significant difference, but he really didn't, and it's disappointing. And I hate being this person every week because I do like Brian Burns. He is one of the best players.
You're a Brian Burns hater.
He's one of the best players on this team, but I just expect so much more from him than what we've seen so far. And he's done this for every season that he's been on this team. He will show up in a game and then he'll disappear for 2 or 3. And he'll show up in another game and then he'll disappear for 2 or 3. And it's just, I need the consistency from him to be able to pay him almost $30 million a year. I mean, that's really going to it's really going to handicap this team if they're paying him $30 million a year and he's disappearing for 2 or 3 games at a time throughout the season. I mean,
he does need help though. And I get the harp and I agree. I mean, statistically he needs to be better. I 100% agree with you. He needs to make plays that are impactful, but he also needs someone on the opposite side of him, and he has not had that the last 2 years and has literally done it solo. And if we really want to get on guys, a guy who needs to be called out is Justin Houston because he hasn't done shit since he's been here. And that was a guy that was supposed to be brought in as a Band-Aid again, like they've done the last couple of years after getting rid of Hassan Reddick, and has not produced sacks whatsoever. He had 9 sacks last year. I think he's got 1 or 2 maybe this year.
Yeah.
And YGM, yeah, he's good against the run, but he has not. He's had like 1 or 2 games where he's serviceable, but other than that, I mean, those guys opposite him, I mean, Brian Burns is doing alone. He's double teamed 20% of the time. I'm looking at the stats right now. ESPN put him out today. He's 6th in pass rush win rate in the league. He's 6th in the league. He wins 27% of the time on his pass rush attempts. He's getting double teamed. I get it. He does need to make more plays, and I agree with you there, but he has no help whatsoever on that other side. And the D line, I don't think some of these guys are cut out for what Evero wants to do. I mean, obviously, YGM was kind of thrown into a whole new role, and he's kind of embraced it and made some plays here and there. I don't think it's still good enough. He had a really good game a couple weeks ago, but that he's out there. You have Shy Tuttle. I mean, he had a couple. What do you want to call him? He had a couple blocks. Passes deflected. There you go. I was struggling to find it. He had a couple of those in this game, but I don't think he's had a big enough impact. Deshaun Williams came in as well. You don't hear much about him. Like those guys along that defensive line need to be showing up in these games because I think there's just no pressure on these quarterbacks whatsoever. And those guys got to bring interior pressure as well. So I think that coupled with a ton of injuries, like Carolina defensively has been hindered too. We talk about offense injuries. There were both starting safeties this week. They had a guy starting who was just signed off the practice squad last week. You don't even know how to pronounce his name. I've never heard of him. And he's starting for them when they drafted Jamie Robinson. That tells you how much faith they have in him. Yeah. Who's been in training camp all year and who's played in preseason games and should know the system by now and has not started at all. He played like 1 or 2 snaps. You got a guy they drafted, DJ Johnson, who ain't doing jack shit. And he's been brought in to set the edge. What is he doing? He ain't doing shit right now. And then you have both your safeties out. You have your top cornerback out who can't stay on the field, who's been out since week 1. You have Dante Jackson, who's injured half the time. You also have your inside linebacker, who's supposed to be the quote unquote captain. He's out for the year. So like, there's so many hits across this team on defense. It's crazy. I mean, I can't blame Evero too much, but you also got to scheme up for the players you got. And I just don't think some of these guys are fit out to what they're trying to do right now. And it's just not working. This system isn't working for them right now. With all those guys together, it was even going to be hard to do. And now you're asking guys that are, coming off the streets basically to come in here and fill in. And I don't think Farley played awful, but I just think there's just way too many injuries, and they just don't have the guys right now to consistently win in this system right now. They just don't. I mean, they need more players this offseason. Clearly.
What they need to do is learn how to draft in the late rounds, even the second round and on. They need to learn how to draft and get players that can come in and play significant time the year that you draft them, because for the past 2 or 3 years, I mean, they've drafted these guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds that are either cut, not on the team anymore, or on the practice squad and not playing significant time on this defense or offense. I mean,
the only guy I can think of is Brady Christensen. That's had an impact.
Yeah. I mean, you got guys like you mentioned, Jamie Robinson, who was a 5th round pick. You got DJ Johnson, who they traded up for. These guys should be playing because of the injuries that have happened and playing significant roles on this team. And they're hiding them is what they're doing because they're not ready or they're not good enough. And it's really frustrating. And ultimately that falls on the person in charge of drafting players, and that's Scott Fitterer. That's your general manager. And I don't know if this scouting room needs revamped or if we need a new general manager or what, but continuing to miss on these draft picks, you win championships. The saying around the league is that you win championships in the late rounds of the drafts and in the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds of the draft, because that's when you get your value for those players and those draft gems that you find. And you have to be able to identify those and go get them and then allow them to play on your team and make a role for themselves. And Carolina just hasn't done that in years. I mean, it's been a long time. A long time. And like you said, Brady Christensen's the only one that I can think of really that was a later round draft pick. I think he was a 3rd round and played a significant role for this team. The only even 2nd rounders were missing on. Terrace Marshall, Jeremy Chin, he's fallen off. I mean, it's crazy the amount of misses this team has had in recent years.
Well, Barno, where's Barno? Like, I haven't seen much of him, and I get it. He was a 6th-round pick, but throw that guy in there if you like. They need to just keep mixing shit up.
One player I'm wondering about is Marquise Haynes, because his injury I didn't think was very serious when the season started, and he's still out. Where the fuck is Marquise Haynes at? And he was supposed to be a starter. He was the guy that was going to start in place of Justin Houston. So I don't know if the injury was more serious than what they were leading on or what they were trying to tell us, but hopefully he's back week 7, because I think he could be a significant boost to this defensive line opposite of Brian Burns, because he is a similar play style of Brian Burns with a speed rusher, and better than I guess what we've had opposite of Brian Burns, hopefully. So where's Marquise Haynes at? Like, I don't. This team is so secretive now with injuries and how.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But I agree with you, man.
It's crazy.
I've been bitching about that for weeks. Start in preseason, I felt like it was under wraps of who was hurt and who was not. And Sanders, this is a minor injury, and then he's out the whole preseason. Like,
yeah,
I don't think that messaging has been very clear, and I agree with you. I think, from my understanding, Haynes, I don't want to say this wrong, so I know he was mentioned this week. They asked about him. Can't remember exactly what was said, but I think they were a little bit more confident in Corbett and stuff like that, but I don't remember exactly. But that's another guy that's been totally forgotten about, is Haynes. I mean, I even until you said something, I totally forgot about him. So, but yeah, this defense, obviously injuries. I mean, the main point here is injuries have obviously hindered them, but to this point, guys need to step up and make plays across the board. I thought Camus didn't have a great game this last week for what they were. There was a couple plays where one of the touchdowns, he cut inside and tried to like spin out on the guy. I felt like if he would have set the edge more, it would have the Dolphins player would have had to cut inside, and I think Carolina could have maybe got to stop. I thought Troy Hill had a good game. He obviously had the pick 6 late in the game.
He had that missed tackle on a 3rd down.
Yes, I know. Yeah, he had a missed tackle, and then I might have made that pick 6. I mean, that was right there. Yeah. He was off to the races. But Nick Thurman, wasn't a big fan of that signing and when he was announced on the 53, but he's been playing a lot. I mean, he had 51% snap count this week, which is up there. DJ Johnson, he played 36%. Looks like Deion Jones played a little bit more, obviously, in this game. I think they're using him more schematically just based off of what teams are doing offensively. LeBron Ray, again, these guys you don't see much show up during the games. I mean, I don't see them. I don't even know what numbers they are, to be totally honest with you. But
yeah,
this defense, it's patchwork at this point with all the injuries, but man, it's been brutal these last couple of weeks.
They're missing Marquand McCall. That cut, that random notification we got in the prior to the start of the season of them cutting their starting nose tackle is really, I think, coming to fruition in a bad way for this team, especially in the run game, because they don't really have a true nose tackle right now. And Derek Brown has been, in my opinion, the best defensive lineman, and it's not close. He's been the best. And he's got no help opposite of him. Just like Brian Burns doesn't have help on the other side, Derek Brown has nobody on the interior of that offensive line or defensive line to help him in the run game and generating pressure up the middle. So, I think if Marquand McCall was there, this team might be a little better. I don't know what the deal is. I mean, he looks healthy. I think there was a tweet a couple weeks ago from Jordan Schultz saying that he's ready to go and waiting for a call. That's just a weird situation again, where we don't have a whole lot of information as fans, and what the fuck is going on in Carolina?
All right, let's talk about the biggest news of the week. Many have been wanting this for a bit here, but you have to be literally sleeping under a rock if you've not seen this. But Frank Reich hands over the play calling duties to Thomas Brown. Bryson, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is something that we obviously have been calling for a couple weeks now. I do think that Frank has improved as a play caller. I really liked, for the most part, the play calling in Miami. I thought that the fake punt, I didn't really like the 4th and 1 play call, which Bryce overthrew in the end zone, the Hayden Hurst one. I thought they should have just got the yard and then went from there. But
I was bitching about that one.
For the most part, I was happy with the play calling itself in this past game. But I do think Frank's made progress. But of course, Thomas Brown is the new and upcoming innovative innovative mind in coming from that Sean McVay offense, that Sean McVay system. So I do expect to see some changes to this offense, but like Frank said and like Thomas said, they're not installing a new system completely. So you're going to see some personality, like I said earlier, of Thomas Brown come out in that play calling, which we don't know what that means yet, if it's conservative or if it's aggressive or more motion or whatever it may be. But if it's anything like Sean McVay, there's going to be significantly more motion. And so we'll see how that goes. But, I think it says a lot. I just want to give Frank Reich his flowers. That takes a lot of pride to publicly give up as the head coach who possesses the play calling, who has said that he plans on giving up at some point in the future, to do that and say, hey, to take it out of his hands, which I don't know if he had a choice or not, but to do that and publicly say, I'm letting the offensive coordinator take over and he's calling the shots now on offense. I do think that takes, you're swallowing your pride on that, especially as a head coach who considers play calling, quote unquote, his baby. So I think that he deserves a little bit of flowers on that. I am excited to see Thomas Brown call plays. I do think that it is going to be a more modern style of offense. I think there is going to be more motion, if I had to guess. I was trying to look up his numbers when he was the offensive coordinator in Miami. I don't know if you have those numbers, but
I don't, and I was curious about the same thing, and I was hoping to do that this afternoon when I was at work, to be honest with you, but I didn't have time today. But I picked up on that on his presser today because I didn't know that. I didn't know he called plays at Miami.
Yeah.
If you want to look that up, I wanted to mention something here quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
You talked about the 4th down stuff. They went for it on 4th down 4 times in the game. Obviously, later it was a little bit different. Things got out of hand. But 4 times in the game, I can't remember the last time Carolina has went for it that much. Probably maybe Ron Rivera days. I know Matt Rule liked his fake punts every now and then too, but I did really like the Hecker fake punt. I wanted to mention it because I totally forgot about it before when we were talking about it. But Hayden Hurst, he sticks on that block. I think they get the first down, and that obviously would have changed things up there on that drive. But that one sucked. I agree on the miss to Hurst on that. I think it was like a 4th and 2 or 4th and 1, a long 4th and 1. Thought they could have maybe dialed up something shorter. Bryce Young takes a shot, misses it. But I thought Frank has progressively gotten better over these last couple of games calling plays. And I think you've seen improvement in Bryce Young. But obviously he thought, the time was now to make it. And I'm excited to see what Thomas Brown can do. I've always had respect for him. You can just tell in his press conference, like he just seems so prepared on like everything, down to questions that reporters. I mean, just every little intricacy you can think of. And I think that's what you want out of an offensive coordinator. Did you get those stats yet, or did you find them, or you couldn't?
It's hard to get numbers like where they ranked in the country. So it was an offense that averaged almost 274 passing yards a game, 2 touchdowns a game. They did average 150 rushing yards a game, and
okay.
And
I think you're going to see him lean on that a lot more than probably Frank Reich did, because he obviously he was a running back too, so like he has those roots.
Yeah. So his like you mentioned, his roots are in running the ball significantly because he was a running back at Georgia. So I do expect to see some more outside zone runs instead of the inside zone stuff. And maybe he does implement more of a 50-50 timeshare in that backfield. I know that it's so far this season it's been up to Deuce Staley, the running back rotation. So maybe he changes that. But I do think that one thing that we are going to see that is a significant difference between Frank Reich's offense to Thomas Brown's is the trust in Bryce Young. I do think that Thomas Brown significantly trusts Bryce Young more than Frank Reich does. I don't think he doesn't think Bryce Young is good, Frank Reich that is. I just think that Frank Reich thinks Bryce Young needs time to grow, and he doesn't want to put him in these situations to where he's risking turning the ball over and things like that. Thomas Brown is Bryce Young's biggest fan. I mean, this guy in his presser today, when he was interviewed, he told him Bryce Young was the best quarterback in the draft when he was asked, is what he said. And this is a guy that's called him the brain from day one. This was his guy. Everybody knew that Thomas Brown was a fan of Bryce Young. So I think we are going to see a more up-tempo, no-huddle offense, allow Bryce to operate in the more of a playmaking ability style. And I do think that they're going to call more deep shots because, again, I do think Thomas Brown trusts in Bryce more than what Frank Reich's play calling has shown up to this point in the season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you go back to the pro days on of the campaign around the country pretty much, and Thomas Brown just said, I mean, he had those lovey heart eyes for Bryce Young from the start. You mentioned the brain. I mean, everything along the way, you just could tell like Thomas Brown loves this guy, and I think that's a really good thing for Carolina. I know people are freaking out. Oh, Carolina's already making a change. This is already going to be such an adjustment for Bryce Young, but I really think when it comes down to it, that their close relationship is going to come out on the field. And I think you're going to see a more well-maintained product when it comes to, pre-snap penalties, and Frank can focus more on that. And I think that's going to help greatly with the progress you see, because we already are seeing progress from Bryce Young. No matter how you want to look at the numbers, there is progress every single week that he's making. And I think that's just going to flourish more and more. And echoing what you said, I think you're going to see a ton more motion. I'm wondering how involved these tight ends are going to be moving forward. I gotta give him credit. Tommy Tremble, I thought, has looked good these last couple of weeks. See if that keeps up. But I thought he's played well and has added a little bit of a spark to this offense too. So I'm excited to see what happens. It's obviously not where Carolina wanted to be at this point, 0-6. I want to ask you this, going off of this, because this was asked this week from Frank. Do you think David Tepper had a role in this decision to change play callers, or do you believe Frank when he said this was 100% my decision?
I have no reason not to believe Frank. I do think that one thing Frank Reich has been in Carolina is extremely truthful, whether that be to a detriment to himself or not. Admitting that he called a play for Adam Thielen and he didn't know Adam Thielen wasn't on the field is not something many coaches would come out and say publicly in a presser. So I wholeheartedly believe that in Frank, and I think that he's telling the truth when it comes to this. I think that he genuinely thought that the bye week was the best time to do the transition, and maybe if the offense looked better and they had won some games, he would have, pushed it back more, the handoff of the offensive play calling. But I think everything's just worked out to the bye week, and being 0-6 and the offense. Technically the Panthers have the highest scoring offense in the NFC South. I don't know if you knew that, but they averaged the most points per game, which is crazy to think about. But that's just how bad the NFC South is. And so it could be worse, right? The offense could be worse. I think they're like 22nd in the league technically right now. Points per game. So, they've made progress from week 1 to now, but not as much as we would hope, and not enough to win any game. So it's a perfect time to do it, and hopefully Thomas Brown gives you that shot in the arm and gives you a win coming out of the bye week. I know you had tweeted, I think, a couple days ago that Frank Reich is 4-0 as a head coach after the bye week. So maybe we go 5-0. Who knows?
Please Please. Can you hear that? I hope you guys can hear me knocking on the wood. Yeah. I do have to ask this though, because I hate to go this route because I hate when people think of it this way, but it needs to be asked because I felt like the sentiment this offseason was if you go out and hire an offensive head coach, you don't have to hire an offensive coordinator every couple of years because you already have the guy calling the plays. And now we already have in week 6, Frank Reich, who was supposed to be calling plays, already has given those up. And the way this trajectory is going with Thomas Brown, he's already a well sought after guy. He's already been interviewed for coaching positions. Let's say this thing takes off and Bryce Young plays outstanding the rest of the way this season and starts to take off a little bit more and you see, really good progress. Thomas Brown might be out of here in 2 to 3 years as a head coach candidate. And now you're back to what is Frank Reich going to do? Is Frank Reich going to take back over the play calls and then maybe Scott Frazier take it over or Josh McCown or whatever the case may be? And then it begs the question, why didn't they just keep Steve Wilkes and hire a Thomas Brown?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's hard to defend hiring an offensive-minded head coach and then him giving up the offensive play calling in week 6 of the NFL season because of a multitude of reasons. So, yeah, I mean, that is a hard thing to defend, and I don't know if –
and it's hindsight. I mean, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, and I think that they might be in a sticky situation if Thomas Brown takes over and the offense looks significantly better, Bryce Young looks significantly better, and you're like, okay, we get to the end of the year, we've won a couple games, and the team has just – has a significantly better trajectory overall. And they're like, do we want to lose Thomas Brown or do we move on from Frank Reich? Like, do we fire him to hire the offensive coordinator? I mean,
I don't see that happening. I don't. Like, I just think, the argument in the offseason was, well, we'll go out and I think Tepper even may have said this in his, like, you go out and hire an offense guy. You don't have to be hiring an offensive coordinator every couple of years. And that was kind of the approach of going to get an offensive guy because then you don't have to have that turnover constantly because good teams that have that and have a good OC, they're going to be a head coach someday. That's just the way the trend of the NFL is going. Offense is, the cream of the crop. So I just feel like we're at that point where, Frank Reich has already given that up, and I know he's alluded to that, but I just thought it was worth throwing that out there because I know some people are thinking that of, well, why don't we just keep Steve Wilkes and go get a Thomas Brown and still keep that continuity and whatever it was. Again, I'm not saying they should get rid of Frank Reich. I think that's drastic and let this guy play this season out. Let's see how things develop. And I don't think people for calling for Frank Reich's job already I think it's ridiculous and it does not help Bryce Young at all. It does not help Bryce Young out whatsoever. So let this thing play out. Let's see his development. I think he's making progress, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I know some people are thinking that right now.
I think you'll know what kind of head coach Frank Reich is halfway through the second year. So I think that at that point we can start talking about at the end of this season in year 2 and going into year 3, Frank Reich's on the hot seat. He's got to do something. And I think that's, right around the time frame when Matt Rule really things started heating up for him as well. So I think at halfway through next year, we're really going to know if Frank Reich is the right guy for the job. And I hope that he is. I do like Frank a lot. I like his history with the team, his history in Charlotte. I do hope that he's the guy, and I think that he still has a chance to be the guy, the head coach in Carolina. So, yeah, I mean, people calling for his job 6 games into the NFL season. That's crazy. Although we are 0-6, which is extremely disappointing, and Frank will tell you that's extremely disappointing, but we haven't looked completely incompetent, I don't think. The penalties have been an issue, but most of the games besides the past 2, which were against 2 of the best teams in the NFL, the best team in the NFC, which is the Lions, and then the best offense in the NFL, which is the Miami Dolphins, All the other ones were close. So I don't know. It is frustrating to be 0-6, but let's be patient with Bryce and patient with Frank and see how these things start to mesh going into year 2.
All right, let's end on this because we are getting towards the trade deadline here. It's October. I think it's Halloween this year. I think it's October 31st or October 20. Yeah, I think it's
It's the
October
31st. Yeah.
So, question, should the Panthers be buyers or sellers at the deadline? I think I know where your head is with this, but let's throw it out there.
My answer is yes.
What? Yes. What? You gotta pick a side.
They should be both. They should be both. I think that they should sell on guys like TMJ and Jeremy Chin and potentially Brian Burns.
There it is. I knew it was coming.
Potentially, if they can get a deal like an offer like they got last year from the Rams, I think that you consider doing
But what do
that.
they do on the D line then, Matt? I mean, they have no one.
Well, I mean,
no one.
Yeah, I understand that, but
you have Derek. No, I shouldn't say it. You have Derek Brown, but that's it.
Yeah. But if they don't sign him and they lose him for nothing, then how dumb do you feel?
Tag I talked about a couple weeks ago. You put that tag on him, and you get insurance. You still get your couple first round picks,
and then he holds out and doesn't play. So because he's franchise tagged, I'm just saying, if you're offered 2 first rounds and a third again, you might take that this go around. But and I think they should be a buyer on a wide receiver to get Bryce some help, opposite of Adam Thielen. I don't like that Adam Thielen's the only guy that's getting open, and Bryce is struggling, holding the ball, getting sacked, and do that for the whole entire year. Not a fan of that idea at all. If they can get a guy like Jerry Jeudy for a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick, why not bring him in and do that? Jerry Jeudy averages significantly higher separation per route run than any receiver on the Panthers roster, even more than Adam Thielen. So I think Jeudy, with the Alabama connection with Bryce Young, could be a guy that is of some help. I know Steve Smith isn't a fan, so that'd be a little awkward. But I mean,
well, he wasn't a fan of Baker Mayfield either, and look what happened. So
yeah, I mean, it could be a guy like Jeudy. It could be a guy like T. Higgins, who I think is going to cost more. I'm not a huge T. Higgins fan. I think that he's kind of the same of what we have now, a big receiver who can't separate, but he's better talent-wise than what we have. I don't know. I think Jerry Jeudy is specifically, if you can't tell, is the guy that I want in Carolina, and I'm going to hold out hope until the deadline that he's a Panther, because I think that he could significantly help Bryce Young in his growth and be that guy, that wide receiver. I think Jerry Jeudy will be the best wide receiver on the team as soon as he enters the building. Although I think Adam Thielen has obviously outperformed.
Adam Thielen would like a word with you.
Adam Thielen has outperformed his his role, what he was brought in for. So I'm very appreciative of him, but I don't think Adam Thielen talent wise is the same as Jerry Jeudy at this point in their careers. So Jerry Jeudy played with bad quarterbacks throughout his whole career. He's had injuries, but he is a wide receiver that is an elite route runner who specializes in separation. And when you take out like one game versus the Chargers 2 years ago, has a significantly lower drop percentage than the league as well. So maybe with a quarterback like Bryce, he does put up numbers like Adam Thielen does, because he's going to be open. He's going to be getting open, and he's going to hopefully get a lot of targets. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think they should consider doing both.
Yeah, I think you know where I'm going. Sell. I think they need draft picks, and I know it's kind of counterintuitive when we're just talking shit about how they can't draft, but they need draft picks. They're a really bad team, and they're going to have high draft picks this upcoming year. I don't think you can give away a 2nd rounder. If Carolina at 0-6, I think would be foolish if they go into this next draft with not a 1st or 2nd round pick. I don't think it'd be good at all, and I just think the state of this team. I understand the argument for you can't disregard Bryce Young's growth this year, because I think that is big and crucial. But I just don't think they have the ammo to go get a guy like Jeudy. I think the asking price is too much. I think
a third.
I don't think
a third is too much.
I don't think it's going to be a third. I think they're going to want a 2nd for him. again, I don't know all the reports out there, but I just think he's going to be too much. I could see them getting maybe a lower tier guy, more like a Marquise Brown. I think that could be a possibility, and I think he would garner a little bit less than what Judy is. But
I'm
even
opposite
then,
on that. I think Marquise Brown would cost more. Marquise Brown is
then Judy.
Yeah, Marquise Brown has put up significant numbers in Arizona as a wide receiver one, like clear cut wide receiver one. I think Marquise Brown would cost probably a second, maybe even a first to get him from Arizona. But so I guess I just want to know if there was a scenario where the Panthers could get Judy for a third. Are you interested in that?
I don't hate the idea, but I'm not a big Judy guy. Just never have been. I don't know. I think he would obviously be pretty good on this team just looking at the room, but I think his injuries and I don't know. I'm not a big fan. And the guy burned me a couple. Picked him up in DK. I'm sorry, going off on a random fantasy here. I picked him up in DK last week. He had a scuffle with Steve Smith or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it on the sideline. I thought he would go off in that game. Laid an egg, had like 4 points. I'm done with Judy. Get him
So
out
now
here.
we know why you don't want him.
But no, I've just never. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I just have not been would he be an upgrade for this room? Yeah, but I don't think it's worth giving away assets right now because you can go out and get some of these guys in free agency in the offseason and you don't have to trade for them. So you don't have to give up capital for it. Obviously, you got to pay them. I understand that, but I feel like you just kind of ride this season out for what it's worth. If you can get someone cheap, maybe make a move for someone, but if Carolina had 2 or 3 wins, I'd say I'm all for it. Go get Judy in a heartbeat. But that's not where they're at. I mean, they're 0-6. They're not going to contend they're not going to the playoffs. Like, shut that out. Like, it's not, close the door on that. That emoji I like to use where the guy slams the door, slam that shit. Like, I can't see, it's not happening. But I just think just where they're at in this season, I would ride it out. I think, especially with this turnover with a new play caller, I think that might open some things up here and just let this thing ride out. But maybe for maybe like a guy I can think of, and I know this isn't a number 1 wide receiver, but McCole Hardman, I think he would add some value. Maybe that's someone you come out and go and get where it's not a second, third, fourth round or a second or third round pick. You can get maybe a late rounder for them. So I don't know. I think if they do go that route, and there's obviously been reports out there, maybe they go and get it done. And who knows? Maybe they get Judy before 31st and you got the hard eyes for them. So
let me ask you this. If a receiver like Devontae Adams, who has been reported to be very unhappy in Oakland, becomes available and Carolina is calling about Mr.
But
Devontae.
how are you going to trade for him? Like, you think Carolina's getting him for a second? No way now.
No, you'd have to trade a player, and you know who that player would be.
Brian Burns?
Yeah.
I would want more than just Devontae for Brian Burns.
Well, I think you would get more than just Devontae for Burns, but Burns would be the centerpiece that would, in my mind, the only person that Oakland would be interested in, right? Opposite of Max Crosby, that's going to be a disgusting defensive line. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. I like if that's a scenario and they're like Devontae Adams in a second, and we get Brian Burns, maybe that's something you consider if you're Carolina.
I would consider that. I would consider it. I'm not saying yes or no, but I'd consider that.
Yeah.
But again, like, I just think right now this team should be sellers. Buyers, not at all. Not at all. They're too terrible to be buying anything at this moment. But you know how Scott Fitter is. I'm sure they're going to be busy at the deadline. Chin looks like he's on his way out. We've been talking about it for weeks. We've been talking about it in the offseason as a possibility. So that is something to monitor. TMJ possibility. And maybe that's a flop. Maybe that's a switch. Maybe it's him for another wideout. Maybe it's you just switch wideouts. I mean, that could be a possibility too, where they do a straight up flip. he might work out in a better system, and Frank or Thomas wants someone else. So well, who knows? Maybe we got Cooper Kupp. Thomas Brown's familiar with Cooper Kupp over in Los Angeles.
I'll tell you what, I'll take that rookie Puka Nacua.
Yeah, we'll take him on his rookie deal. Send him over. Well, he's kind of like a Thielen, though, isn't he? He's like that possession type guy.
I'll take him.
But I mean, it's still. I mean, we'd take him. But anyway,
Yeah.
So there you go. You got me talking a little bit of trade there for you. Still, sell it. Sell that shit all day long. Do not be a buyer this time go around, please, Scott. But I think that is all for us here on the Panthers on Tap podcast. We want to just thank everyone for tuning in to the Panthers on Tap podcast. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap for all your analysis and breaking news. And as always,